Hey guys, App Driven Guy coming at you January 31st, 2017. Just wanted to make a really simple Uber and Lyft advice video. This is just a video for like people that are just starting to do Uber and Lyft, or maybe you've been doing it for a couple months and you're just not quite getting like where to be, when to be, all that kind of stuff. I just want to keep this really simple and easy because you can drive yourself crazy trying to be at exactly the right place at the right time. And there is a lot to be said about that. There's a big learning curve with doing rideshare. There's a lot, that you learn over time. But I think the simplest advice I can give people is to think like a passenger, okay? Which means, let's start with the early morning. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning, the earliest kind of shift you can work, to the latest shift you can work. So 3 o'clock in the morning, that's when I typically will get up between 3 and 4. And that time of the morning, you're typically going to be taking airport rides only. About 90% of the rides you get between 3 and 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning are going to be airport rides. You will have some residual drunk, I call it residual drunk orders, where it's like people that are left over from the bar rush, people that are closing bars, people that are hanging out at house parties that need a ride home. So you'll get those too. The way to avoid those orders is to set your destination filter. I'll use my destination filter and set it to the airport between about 3 o'clock and 4:30. I'll do that. Now, the one thing you got to remember with that is when you use your destination filter, it negates any promotions that you might be working toward, or with Lyft, it doesn't count towards your power driver bonus, any rides that you get during that destination mode. So you might want to take that into account, if you're trying to hit your power driver bonus. So that's where I'm at with the mornings, 3 to 4:30. Like I said, destination filter between like 4:30 and 5:30. I mean, it's pretty much like 90 to 95% airport rides. You're really not going to get very many of the residual bar or drunk orders. But even if you do, I mean, whatever. They're always quick, and wherever it puts you, you're going to end up with an order going to the airport in most cases anyway. So that time of the morning, it's not really so important like where you are, because pretty much wherever you're at, as long as you're in the city area, you're going to get a ride, even if it's 15 minutes away. Usually it's going to be a ride to the airport, so it's going to work out pretty well. Now, let's say in Portland in particular, once I drop off at the airport that time of morning, I will try to head back to the downtown area, or anywhere within a few miles of downtown is pretty good. I usually will leave Lyft on while I'm heading towards downtown. I pretty much lean towards Lyft because people tip more often, because they can tip through the app, and you usually have better conversation for some reason. I mean, Uber is just a lot more business clients, they're not talkative at all. There's a lot of reasons, but I just have better experiences through Lyft. So when I'm leaving the airport, I'll typically leave Lyft running, turn Uber off until I get closer to the downtown area. If I haven't got a ping by then, I'll turn Uber back on, and I'll go with both. Also, that's dependent on if I'm trying to reach my power driver bonus. Sometimes I'll just leave Lyft off completely, or I'll leave Uber off completely. So that's for the early morning. Now, like I said, when I leave the airport, I try to head back towards the downtown area. That's when the traffic is moving smoothly on the freeway. I'll do that. After about 6:30, 7, dependent, of course, upon where you're working, what your area is like, you may want to consider leaving the airport a different way. After like 6:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, when the traffic gets really heavy, I'll head back through town, through like the northeast portion of town in Portland, heading back towards downtown, but I'll do it in a different way. So I'll go through the neighborhoods to get back to Portland. That way I can catch any commuter rides, because that's typically, between 6 and 7 is when you start getting a lot more commuters going downtown. So I will pick up, I'll just leave the app on, go through the neighborhoods and see if I can pick up a commuter ride going back into downtown. Then once I'm downtown, this is where it comes into thinking like a rider, like where are the people going to be? If you have a ride taking you right to the heart of downtown, chances are you're not going to get a ride immediately in that area. So what you need to do is either maybe head to the uptown area of wherever you're at, head to, a more like a suburb area, maybe just outside of downtown. Like in Portland, Oregon, for instance, there's like the southeast portion of town where there's a lot of people that work downtown. It's just like, a couple miles out. Wherever you are, I'm sure you have an idea of somewhere that's close to your downtown area where you can get to pretty quickly. See, that time of morning, traffic always flows into downtown. So if you have a drop-off that you just did on the downtown area, traffic is very easy going away. So you need to choose where is a good place for me to go pick somebody up to go back into downtown, because pretty much every ride you take is going to take you back into downtown that time of day. So that's pretty much how the mornings go. After 6 o'clock, after you're done with the airport stuff, any ride you get, like I said, is going to take you downtown. Then you try to go, to a portion that's going to take you back in again. Then a lot of times downtown will surge close to 9 o'clock when everybody's like last minute trying to get downtown. And sometimes you'll get lucky. You'll catch a surge ride taking you away from downtown. Now, myself personally, after about 9 o'clock, after that's all dead, I kind of would like to get away from doing rideshare at that time. Maybe you could just, do, if you have other things to do, if you have a job that starts at that time. Some of the food delivery apps get kind of busy around that time. Caviar starts up at 10. I'll get Postmates orders around then. But that's other advice for other videos. I want to keep this to rideshare, Uber and Lyft. So now we'll go to, there's a lunch rush that kind of picks up in downtown areas around noon. It's kind of hard to say. Between like 9 in the morning and like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, there's really not much going on. You're going to pick up just random rides going here to there. But it can get kind of discouraging working between those hours, depending on your area. It might be good for you, but I think that's a good time to kind of take a break, do other things. If you have Amazon Flex in your arsenal, it's great if you can pick up Amazon blocks between 9 and 3 in the afternoon. But then if you want to get back into rideshare for the rush, for the afternoon commute, a lot of areas it jumps off around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's where you would start off again. Downtown, it's going to be just the opposite of what I was describing in the morning. You're going to have people, that pick up in the downtown area, going out to the suburbs. And so once you drop them off in those suburban areas, traffic's going to be nice and light going back to downtown. In some cases not. Just depends on your city. So you do just the opposite of what I was describing earlier. You pick people up downtown, you take them out to these neighborhoods, you double back right into downtown. If you don't want to double back into downtown, just keep your app running. But in most cases, you're going to get a ride taking you even further out. You're usually not going to get very many rides taking you into the downtown area. So that'll continue between 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You just keep doubling back to downtown. The app takes you away. See, both of the early and the morning commute and the evening commute, the upside is, you're going to get rides. You're going to get rides going to or from downtown. The downside is, if you want those rides continuously, you have to keep doubling back to where it's busy. And it's really only worth it if there's a surge going on. If it's surging downtown, it's worth it to keep going back and then getting sent back out. Vice versa in the morning, it's worth it if there's a surge in the outer areas that's taking you into downtown. Otherwise, you're kind of just having to double back and spending your gas and time doing it. So that can be kind of discouraging too. So that takes us into the week, the evenings, the nights, and the weekends. So that's where the biggest money is with rideshare, obviously, is you're going to have, the night rush, which starts around typically like 6 or 7 at night. You're going to have people that are trying to get downtown to go to events and concerts. So again, suburban areas going into downtown. You can double back, get people going back in. But then you'll also have a lot of intermixed people, getting off work late and stuff like that. So you can just kind of get a ride from a suburban area into downtown, wait for your next ride. That time of night is you can just kind of get rides just taking you wherever. You don't have to really double back. And then when you work into the bar rush time, it's going to die out between like 7 o'clock at night till about 11. It's kind of dead in that area. It might pick up around like 9 when people are like, going to a different bar, or like people are just going out to eat and they want to go home. Then typically around midnight, it'll usually start to pick up. It can be any given night, it might be a Monday or Tuesday. It could get busy because maybe a lot of drivers aren't working that night. Maybe there's a big concert going on, things going on in your town. But through the weekdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's typically going to be just kind of hit or miss. It might not be that busy. But then Thursday, Friday, Saturday is obviously where it picks up. Thursday is the weekend for a lot of people. They're going to be wanting to go to bars. So same thing applies, but then between about midnight and 3 is where you're going to get a lot of people bar hopping. So you're going to take a lot of short trips between midnight and like 1:30 to, you'll just be taking people to different bars, bar hopping. And then, we all know if you've been out anywhere after like 1:30 to 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, depending on when the bars close in your area, you're going to get a lot of surge, a lot of prime time with Lyft, and people typically wanting to go home. My strategy, after 1:30 at night or in the morning, you pick people up. If it's prime time, you run them out to wherever they're going, 3, 4, 10 miles, whatever it is, out of the downtown area where the surge is happening, and then you get back there as fast as humanly possible. You turn off your app, you rush back into the downtown area. Otherwise, you're just going to be picking people up in those outer areas and taking them even further out, or just taking them into those neighborhoods, where you're far out already, just picking up at some random bar going down the street. So you turn off the app, you get back to that downtown area or whatever it is where it's surging, where the big money is, and you get that next surge ride. And that's it. That's the simplest advice I can give you on rideshare. You got to think like the passengers. Like, where are we going this time of night? Where are we going to end up? Where do people, live? Where do they want to go hang out? You just think like them, where you want to be. Stick to areas of town where you prefer to work, places you enjoy working, places that's about the best advice I can give you. It's really simplistic, and get through that learning curve. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.